So History March has a four-part series about William the Conqueror, plus the additional Battle of Stamford Bridge between Harold Hardrada and I think Harold Godwinson. And so yeah, I'm gonna lump that in with this four part. So 5 videos in total I'm gonna be reacting to, starting with this one about the early years of William the Conqueror. Now, William the Conqueror is pretty famous, known as William of Normandy, known as William the Bastard. You know, his main claim to fame, as what we all know him from, is his conquest of England, and how that affected the English language. Oversimplified has a pretty great video about it, which we did react to, about, you know, the battle that changed the English language as we knew it due to the French influence. So overall, he's a pretty important guy in terms of linguistics and the development of language. I even remember when I was in college, I took a class about the history of the English language, and William the Conqueror was like, I think the first lesson, one of the first lessons of that class. So pretty big guy overall. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than that. I do know about his influence, obviously, with the Hastings and whatnot. And I know a little bit about his backstory, kind of from, you know, oversimplified, but it's been years since we watched that video, so I have a lot of the details in my head are a bit fuzzy right now about his earlier life, but it'll be cool to see, like, how great he was in battle before Hastings, and what exploits or campaigns he took on, and overall, yeah, like how he earned his very, you know, he was known to have kind of a really, how do you say, tough personality, and even after taking England, the way he put down revolts and whatnot, and he was known to be very brutal, and it'll be kind of cool to see that development and of his army. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than we should probably get to it, huh? So, without any further ado, let's begin the William the Conqueror series, Part 1, The Battle of Valles Dunes, by HistoryMarche.
The name William the Conqueror evokes thoughts of 1066 and the iconic Battle of Hastings, William seizing the throne from King Harold and establishing a dynasty that would last 88 years. However, every icon of history has their beginnings, and William's first great struggle was for the mastery of his own duchy. Still only 19 years old, the young Duke had the support of King Henry I and other influential nobles, but several of William's kinsmen, including Guy of Burgundy, his cousin, believed themselves to have a better claim to the title. A large coalition of Norman barons formed to take control of the duchy by force. William will have to fight to retain his title. This illustration is from about 200 years after Valledun, showing a battle between French and Norman forces.
I've seen this photo a lot. Like, whenever I used to do, like, you know, research into, like, sort of the medieval era and, like, art and whatnot, because I was really fascinated by their art. Also, there's some pretty funny stuff, like, you can look up how medieval people drew dogs or stuff. Like, some of the animals are hilarious, but yeah, this is one of those paintings that was seared into my mind, and seeing it instantly, it popped back up. I never associated it with William, though. I mean, I've seen the image a lot in my, you know, like, looking through paintings and whatnot, but I never, like, knew exactly the context of it. But to see that now is kind of like a huge revelation at the moment for me, because it's just, this is a pretty famous and pretty common thing I've seen. I've seen this image pop up a lot. in like Google and whatnot, so wow.
Texts like this are known as illuminated manuscripts, and they're some of the most important artifacts from the medieval period. And they're still extremely valuable. In fact, an illuminated manuscript from the 15th century sold for a whopping $575,000 back in 2016. But holding on to art like this goes... In early 1035, William's father, Duke Robert the Magnificent, bade farewell to both William and his errant vassals, setting off for the Holy Land and leaving the government in the steady hands of Robert, his uncle, and the Archbishop of Rouen. Before leaving, he also gathered the Norman magnates, having them swear an oath to recognize William as their future ruler. However, this clearly irked some of his kinsmen. At this point, it is useful to consider young William's parentage, as this would provide the casus belli for William's early enemies.
Isn't... I've heard like back then that being a bastard was kind of like a big issue with people. Like, I don't think bastards had as much, I could be wrong, by the way, but this is just offhanded things I've heard. I'm not sure if this is like a, true or false about the medieval era and back then, but yeah, being a bastard kind of gave you less opportunities compared to more, I suppose, legitimate people. I'm not sure, that's just stuff I've heard, and like, it's kind of associated with medieval stuff, even like, like novels and stuff based around medieval culture. I'm not sure, I could be completely wrong, this is just stuff I've heard offhand, but if any of that is true, then that would explain something, because that's like the first thing that popped in my mind is because of, his questionable parentage, being a bastard, I also think I'm just like Jon Snow from like Game of Thrones. Like being a bastard was a huge issue then. Funny thing is, little cool fact about me, I'm also a bastard. And what I mean by that is like my parents never actually married. Like my mom and dad knew each other as teenagers, and then my dad didn't really want to. I was kind of not meant. I guess I'm what you can call a happy accident, and my dad didn't want to deal with that, so he bailed, so, I should have named this channel Edwin the Bastard, that would have been great. And then if I ever succeed in this channel, it goes big, or does successful, I can, change my name to Edwin the Conqueror, that would have been great. Missed opportunity, but, yeah, so already, me and William have something in common.
William's illegitimacy may have divided opinion, but at the time attitudes were still ambiguous. Normandy itself had been established in 911 by treaty, by William's Viking ancestor Rollo, and taking wives in the Danish manner was hardly unheard of, though the practice was a source of unease for men like William of Jumièges, one of the main sources for William's life. Indeed, Duke Robert had never found a suitable wife, though he had had a liaison with a girl from the town of Falaise called Herleva. Fulbert, her father, has been described as an undertaker and commonly a tanner, though it is unlikely he was of such low.
Okay, so Herleva went on to marry Herluin in 1031 AD, mothering two prominent sons, Otto, Bishop of Ajax, and Robert, Count of... Okay. Yeah, I remember that, in oversimplified telling, he said that, William's dad got it on with a tanner's daughter or something, like tannery. I could be a bit wrong about the specific occupation, but yeah. And that I think as an insult, I think to William, a lot of people beat their stuff. Was it a tannery? I can't remember at the moment. Like I said, the details are hazy, so I keep apologizing, but that is what I'm remembering.
Status stock, probably being a burgess at the ducal court and becoming a chamberlain. Even so, this illegitimate status and the perceived lack of a strong sword behind ducal authority would set the stage for the first rebellions against young Duke William's rule. As for Duke Robert himself, he did make it to Jerusalem, though he died at Nicaea on the return journey, leaving his bastard son William his successor back home.
At least Robert tried. Oh my gosh, his name is Dude, my dad was named Robert. Wait a minute. What the? Wait. Yo, that's wild. My dad was also named Robert. That's wild, dude. I just caught that right now on the top of my head. At least William's dad did try to, like, get everyone to accept William. He definitely tried before he just bailed and died. You know, went on his pilgrimage, as it were, rather. Wow. Dude, I'm kind of shocked by these similarities I'm having with William. The only thing we have in common, we're both bastards and our dads were named Robert. That's about it, but that's already wild. That was kind of eerie. I'm sorry, that caught me off guard.
Unfortunately for the boy Duke, Archbishop Robert was an elderly man who did not long outlast his nephew. He died in 1037, and the duchy became a decidedly more dangerous place for the young William. Unlicensed castles appeared with no central authority to keep local rivalries in check. Magnates fought to gain the upper hand over each other, with Orderic Vitalis providing us with a particularly gruesome account of one William Geroy, who was seized by his enemies at a wedding feast and had his nose and ears cut off, as well as his eyes gouged out.
Yo! Oh my goodness.
William himself had been appointed various guardians, but they proved of little avail. The most powerful died quickly, with Alan the Duke of Brittany falling in a siege in 1040, and the Count of Brionne, Gilbert, assassinated while on a morning ride. More personal stewards fared no better, with his tutor Thorold murdered in 1041, and his household steward Osbern having his throat slit, apparently while he slept in the same chamber as the young Duke himself.
Dude, I would be so paranoid. I can kind of understand why William became a bit more harsh down the line. Obviously, you know, there have been a lot of critiques against William, especially later on, with what he did as King of England and his brutality, as it were. But I can kind of understand how he got there. Look at this. He essentially, like, he must have, like, some type of complex, right, about being a bastard. Again, if it is that big of an issue in the medieval era, then that would already kind of create some type of complex or some chip on his shoulder, as it were. And having to straight up keep evading assassinations, always having to look behind your back, that would create, like, you need to be brutal to survive this brutal world, you know? I can get it. At least how he got there. You know what I mean?
Orderic Vitalis once again provides a colourful annotation, put in William's own mouth and supposedly uttered years later on his deathbed. Many times I was smuggled secretly out of the castle at night by my uncle Walter and taken to the cottages and hiding places of the poor to save me from discovery by traitors who sought my death. Matters darkened around 1043 when the French king sponsored a rebellion in the heart of Normandy itself. A viscount had been so bold as to seize William's birthplace of Falaise, and King Henry I even invaded the south of the duchy to support this move. What is significant is that the decision to move against the threat was William's, an early demonstration of his steely resolve. William had come of age and was invested with arms by his erstwhile enemy King Henry himself. William's relationship with his nominal
already showing his cojones, as it were. He's showing that he's no coward off the bat. He went to go and challenge and defend his duchy. That goes to show you, that's a great showcase of the kind of guy he is. He ain't no coward.
The Lord would prove crucial in the coming years. William's father, Robert, had gained Henry's recognition of him as his heir. Robert, having forged a bond with Henry,
William was likely knighted by King Henry in the period of 1041 through 43, with 1042 or roughly his 15th year generally being the age settled upon.
by harboring him for a time from the faction of his mother Constance, who favored his younger brother Robert as king.
Okay, at least a most joyful day dawned splendidly for all who desired and eagerly awaited peace and justice. Our Duke adult more in his understandings of honorable things and in the strength of his body than in age, was armed as a knight. Okay, let me get some of that info.
Relationship with his nominal overlord would prove crucial in the coming years. William's father Robert had gained Henry's recognition of him as his heir, Robert having forged a bond with Henry by harboring him for a time from the faction of his mother Constance, who favored his younger brother Robert as king. Yet
I see that connection already. Okay.
support for William did not necessarily translate to support for those men surrounding him.
Ralph.
In the following years up to 1047, William removed many from his entourage, with two new major lieutenants emerging by the mid-1040s in the persons of William Fitz-Osbern and Roger of Montgomery. With such faithful men at his side, William began reining in the rebellious lords who had in all the years of his minority simply ignored his government. The year of 1047 was the breaking point. In late 1046, another rebellion sparked, this time with the objective of killing and replacing William as Duke. William's cousin Guy was a legitimate grandson of Duke Richard.
Guy was raised with William in the ducal household and was likely a figurehead around which the western viscounts and nobles rallied. Yeah, William needs to establish his dominance right away.
II, and led a disgruntled group of viscounts from western Normandy who were not about to allow their young overlord to assert his own authority over them. Unfortunately, no contemporary source delves into any of the details of the battle and events, though luckily a Norman historian writing around a century later, called Wace,
Wace was a Norman poet who lived and wrote the Roman de Brut, which covers the events during the reign of King Henry II.
does provide us with a vivid account, which is likely true in its essential narrative, given the other known facts about the time. Trouble erupted while William rested in the western town of Valognes. According to Wace, he was abruptly woken from his slumber and
Okay. Wace informs us that William was warned by imminent danger by a fool named Golet. Golet?
warned of the approach of Guy's rebels. It was a close-run thing, with William scarcely dressed in just his breeches and shirt, and barely having time to fasten on a cloak before fleeing ingloriously on a horse into the...
Dang. If that's true, that account, that fool gets the MVP award. Like, that dude, really saved William there. And yeah, William needs to deal with this, like, now, right? He can't just keep living with these guys trying to kill him every chance they get. But that was a close one, holy crap.
the night. He rode hard, reaching the church of St. Clement near Isigny, where he caught his breath and prayed for a safe route away from his pursuers, before crossing the Vire River and
Okay, William took this route to avoid Bayeux itself, given he did not know who to trust, according to Wace. That's fair. At this point, who can you trust?
reaching Rye before sunrise. At Rye, the fugitive Duke was fortunate to encounter Hubert, a loyal local lord, who furnished the Duke with a fresh horse, as well as the guard of his 3 sons, before remaining on the bridge to meet with William's pursuers. Hubert then led them astray, while William escaped to his birthplace.
Dang, Hubert coming in clutch, bro. Again, like I said, like, I would be so paranoid living at this time. This isn't good. Like, I don't know how some of these people don't develop severe paranoia and just seeing everyone as a potential enemy. Like, I don't know how you could live like that, just like the mental strain.
Of Falaise. Having failed in their ambush at Valognes, Guy and the Viscounts quickly seized control of western Normandy and raised an army to contest William. As for William, unlike in his earlier years of rule, he would not be shunned about from castle to castle, instead seeking the aid of his overlord King Henry, who had agreed to his accession and personally invested him with arms. This was a shrewd move on William's part. William was Henry's vassal, which entailed Henry protecting and aiding him, and so the king mustered an army and marched to William's aid in early 1047.
This is a good, like, relationship, at least as of right now. William needs help, and Henry already has history with his dad, and already is invested in all this. And again, kind of like by being a vassal, Henry previously did invade Normandy, but with this, essentially having William in his back pocket, kind of like indirectly has control, again, like through vassalage, right? So I could see why Henry would be like, yeah, I can get this guy to, you know, at least I would imagine, like, that would be shrewdness on Henry's part, like, indirectly have vassalage over this, make himself stronger. So I could see why Henry would be, like, willing to back William. And yeah, it kind of reminds me of, like, Pyrrhus of Epirus and Ptolemy, like how Ptolemy would help Pyrrhus take back Epirus. So it's kind of that relationship of, like, they both have a lot to gain at the moment from each other, so it makes sense they would team up.
William had also mustered as many men as he could in the east, and the two set out to confront the rebels who had amassed their own sizable force near Caen, at a place called Valledun. The battlefield was a wide, flat area, devoid of woods or rocks. Perfect ground for the cavalry clashes that would characterize the battle.
The French were known for cavalry. Even at their peak, the French knights are kind of somewhat the best examples of medieval knights that we know. You know, like the kind of the stereotypical medieval knight. Like, when you think of a medieval knight, usually it helps to think of, like, a French knight. They were kind of known for that, and to be probably among the best knights in terms of, like, you know, valor and prowess in Europe at their peak. And yeah, William the Conqueror, especially in his army when he went to invade England, was noted to have great cavalry. Like, his cavalry is often noted in battles as being superb. So it makes sense that they would want to pick a place like this to have a cavalry battle, right? It seems like the French especially excel in that. And later on, their cavalry game was impressive compared to their adversaries.
Norman cavalry training was performed in groups of around half a dozen men, the proto-knights of the era having long swapped out their long ships for war horses. The conroy was the basic combat unit, consisting of around 20 to 30 riders arranged 2 or 3 ranks deep. With the use of flags for command and control, these units, contributing to the larger army, could perform controlled charges, flanking maneuvers, and even
the oldest trick in the book, flanking.
Retreats, though the last of these is highly contentious.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, like, definitely around France, a great use of cavalry and the Norman cavalry is starting to show what I was talking about, right? Again, I'm not sure exactly when the knight itself was very prominent. Obviously, you said proto-knight, but they were a pretty big staple of the medieval era, though. their exact development as we know them, you know, the stereotypical fully plated knight, I can't say for sure, because I know the medieval era definitely progressed on. There's also like late, high medieval, middle, you know what I mean. So it's hard to just encompass it all in one area.
The knights of both armies would have fought with spears, shields, and swords, as we see depicted around 2 decades later in the Bayeux tapestry. The typical Norman knight would have been trained from a young age, with even the horses themselves specifically bred to carry their armored masters. The spears were used for thrusting, but were often thrown as javelins too, again as seen in the Bayeux tapestry.
Where'd this...
The rebels, under the overall leadership of Guy, advanced from the west near the river Orne, while Ralph Tessin of Thury converged with them from the southwest.
Okay. Informed says that Ralph Tessin defected back to William on the eve of the battle. Oh, wow.
And the direction of the Lays River. The outnumbered army of Duke William and King Henry, meanwhile, also converged from separate routes.
Okay, striking William with his glove to fulfill a vow he made to strike him if he met him. He kept the vow and fought for the Duke. Oh wow, wait.
The outnumbered army of Duke William and King Henry, meanwhile, also converged from separate routes. King Henry's marching through Mézidon, across the Laison River, and then through Valmarais, across the Muance, to the site of the battle just north of Contville. William himself joined Henry from the direction of Argençay. King Henry and his Frenchmen clashed with the men of the Cotentin under Nigel, thrusting wildly with spears, and when these were broken...
Wait, so he said Ralph defected on the eve of the battle? So that... Are we gonna see a portrayal, or just Ralph not do anything? That's what I'm wondering now.
...nor thrown, drawing swords. At this point, King Henry was struck from his horse by an unknown Norman knight, though he fell into his own ranks and was quickly remounted.
Okay, I thought he died right there. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I thought Henry would die. Fortunately, he's still around, but whoa, that was terrifying.
The unfortunate assailant, however, was trampled by Frenchmen after being surrounded and thrown down. The king then rode throughout his men, encouraging and striking hard at the Normans, aware that any rumor of his fall may cause his men to despair and flee the field. Next to engage Henry was Hamon Dentatus, the rebel lord of Thoringi, who also managed to unhorse the...
Dude, William's side is kind of demolishing the troops he's fighting right now. Look at that. Like, he's demolishing them. And Henry seeming... having the bigger force seems to be the main target for Guy. Guy seems to be focusing a lot more on Henry, but William is kind of wreaking havoc with his cavalry.
King, an unnamed and enraged French knight, in turn charging at him and striking him dead.
Ooh.
As for William, a colourful description has him rushing in, then he spread such terror by his slaughter that his adversaries lost heart and their arms weakened. Indeed,
I like all these maneuvers like William is doing. Like, you see there's little squares going back, striking, moving around, closing, getting closer to, you know, his French allies. And yeah, again, he's demolishing his wing. He already took on, defeated the previous units, and now he's taking on this one.
The glorious young duke charged at Harday, a vassal of Viscount Ranulph himself, driving his sword into the area between his throat and chest, his armor proving useless. It was also around this point that Ralph Tessin, who had positioned himself...
Yes, when he mentioned that, I was like, either Ralph is gonna betray, Guy, or not do anything, but okay, that's cool to see.
...to the southwest, struck his former allies. Ranulph after this realized which way the day was turning, and led the withdrawal from the fighting, though as knights peeled off from combat, this devolved into a rout. The royal army followed the great mass of fugitives west as they attempted flight across the Orne, many being cut down or drowned, so that the mills downstream became clogged with the press of dead bodies. The battle proved a resounding success for William, though the victory was largely Henry's, and also crucially a result of Ralph Tesson's defection. Count Guy, the revolt's nominal leader, fled the field to his own castle of Brienne, where William besieged him for around 3 years, before subduing him and then allowing him to return to Burgundy.
Wow.
Another rebel leader, Grimoald of Plessis, was not so lucky. It had been Grimoald who had been personally responsible for the assassination attempt on William at Valognes. Having been captured, the Duke imprisoned and then later executed him as an example. Grimoald's unlicensed castle was also destroyed, among others. With his victory at Valladolid, the young Duke William of Normandy had vindicated his right to rule. In the autumn after the battle in nearby Caen, William convened a great council of his magnates and bishops, where a truce of God was proclaimed. Now private warfare was restricted to certain days of the week, which would serve to curb the violence and disorder suffered during his minority, with William, of course, exempted from this prohibition. The balance of power had decisively shifted, though William was far from secure in his power and would have many more years of struggle ahead of him on his ultimate path towards the throne of England. If you've made it this far into the video,
Alright, that's cool to see some of his origins, of how he became, you know, the commander he became. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to support get ad-free early subscribing to our channel, we'll see you in the next.
Alright guys, that was a cool part 1, and tomorrow we're gonna be going to part 2.